What's going on, guys? Today we have an exclusive interview with my roommate, Omar Guerrero. Did I say that right?
Close enough, I guess.
I'm working on it. So pretty much Omar is my roommate and he's also in the same program as I am. And if you don't know, we go to Florida State University and we are both master's students in exercise physiology with a major and concentration in sports nutrition, and we're both dietetic interns who will be RDs in the next, 14 months?
Pretty close.
So it's pretty exciting. Okay, so pretty much we have a couple things that we want to talk about today. And first, what we're going to get started with is, Omar, I want you to tell them about your background and how you got into nutrition.
Yeah, so I went to undergraduate school as for a major in mechanical engineering, actually. I grew up pretty much thinking I wanted to be an engineer, went to an engineering high school, and pretty much thought, that's where I wanted to go, that's where I wanted to be. I was also a pretty chubby kid when I was in high school. I weighed about 260 pounds at 16 years old. And it was a pretty rough life when you're a big kid and you're being bullied all the time. But you get through it. But that's pretty much what started it. And so when I went to college and I went to mechanical engineering, I realized I didn't really want to do it. And I kind of was still overweight and kind of wanted to fix that. So what ended up occurring was that I started to lose weight, I started to work out, I started to eat a little bit better. I was away from home, so I didn't have mom's cooking all the time. So I was able to make better choices, a little bit easier. But it pretty much started with that, and I pretty much ended up losing the weight, and I wanted to try to help other people lose weight in some form. So I was actually pretty much trying to decide between exercise and nutrition. I ended up going into the nutrition field because I thought that was the more important aspect of it, and then that's why I'm in this program now, which is for exercise physiology with that concentration in sports nutrition, in order to actually combine both fields and both expertise.
So definitely when you being overweight really shaped your path coming into nutrition. Would you say that being overweight shaped the way that you more so went into a field where you're helping people rather than mechanical engineering where you're more so building and creating?
Yeah, so I hated that life when I was a little bit more overweight. I hated that unhealthy lifestyle, not being able to do daily activities a little bit easier, having that uncomfort of taking off your shirt when you go out. So I wanted that self-confidence. I was pretty unconfident going into high school, and I was trying to really get that self-confidence, and losing weight was pretty much going to help that out. And so when I lost weight and figured that out, I wanted to impact other people in that way. So I pretty much wanted to use that weight loss that I've experienced personally to kind of empathize with future clients and future clientele to say, I know it's hard, I know it can be difficult, but it can be done. It's not impossible. A lot of people think it's impossible to change. A lot of people think you have to change willy-nilly right off the bat. I'm barely at my lowest weight, to be honest. So it's a long process, and I understand that, and I'm trying to show others, that it's not going to be there's not a magic potion for it, and that they have other people who will basically be there with them throughout the whole process.
And I think that's huge, being able to empathize with your future clients and saying, hey, I was there. I know personally, I grew up in a household where my mom's a personal trainer. We ate healthy. It was never something where I was overweight. And I find that's one thing that's very difficult for me, is to empathize and be like, I understand what you're going through. I can't say that. I can't honestly say that. So that's really cool that you can say that. Okay, so moving on, what would you say your interest in the field? I think a lot of people, when they think about nutrition, they think about food. They think about maybe cooking. They think about providing people with systems to get fit. But the field is so vast. I mean, especially our field, more specifically sports nutrition, is even more specialized than someone would normally even think about nutrition. So tell me a little bit about your interest in the field and kind of where you see yourself going.
Yeah, so I actually have a couple interests in the field. Originally, actually, way when I first started, I pretty much thought I wanted to only help obese people, pretty much help them lose weight. That's what I did. That's what my expertise was. I ended up starting to power lift about 2 years ago. So, then I got really into how nutrition plays a role in performance, and how, it really matters. Hydration really matters. Your actual carbohydrates matter, the way the ratios of carbohydrate to protein afterwards to replenish your muscle glycogen does matter, and your pre-workout nutrition matters. And what's different is that for powerlifting, you actually technically, it's similar to fighting in the terms of where we have weight classes, so you have to lose weight. So it's do you try to optimally do that? Like, is there a healthy way to do that? So I was also kind of faced with those kind of difficulties and try to like find out that those were also my interests, because I want to figure out how nutrition plays a role in performance and how it'll help you in terms of your actual workouts, in terms of your daily living, but also I want to be able to counsel people and assist people in just daily activities. Not everybody wants to be the strongest, not everybody wants to be look the best. They just want to feel healthy, they want to feel good. And now I actually do work as like a personal trainer at UFit, and most of the people who I actually see, all my clients, most of them are just older individuals who are just trying to, basically just live their life. They just want their life to be easier, which is what I'm starting to see now, and is where my interest is going in terms of, I want to be able to help other people live a better life, their quality of life, just through nutrition and exercise. So I want to be able to implement that, and I want to be able to help everybody, just when they wake up, they feel good. When they're going to sleep, they feel good. They feel good about themselves, and kind of build more self-confidence. I want to build a community of higher confident people, and nutritionally fit people.
Yeah, I love that. And just from our conversations in the past, I know that one thing that we believe that is kind of hard to find in both the field of dietetics and exercise is this combination of the two, where we find that in reality, when it comes down to it, nutrition and exercise are inseparable. One affects the other, and the other affects the first one, and back and forth. So, you need to fuel yourself correctly for exercise, and then if you're exercising well, then the food is going to change too. So I think that's one belief that we share, and especially why I find that we do so well in the field that we're in.
I agree.
You were touching on how you were a power lifter, and so let's talk more about that. So I know that some people may be watching this, maybe power lifters, maybe they think they're bodybuilders. They don't think they're bodybuilders. They are bodybuilders. I got you guys. Whether they're trying to put on muscle or lose weight, maybe they're trying to cut for a competition. Like, how does nutrition play into performance? I think it's one thing I see from being outside of the powerlifting world is a lot of powerlifters who I know don't think nutrition is important for them, and they believe that all they need to do is eat more to fuel their workout. So let's touch a little bit on that and your ideas.
Yeah. So the way I kind of see it is pretty much the way you're separating your meals is important. So the way I always did it was 3 to 4 hours before my actual lifts, I would have a main meal. And that would pretty much be a good ratio of carbs, proteins, and fats depending on my actual lift for the day and depending on how difficult it was going to be. For example, now I'm kind of doing a hybrid between like athletic training and powerlifting. So on the days where I'm going to be doing more athletic movements, I'm going to probably need a little more carbohydrates to actually fuel me for those sprints, for those cone drills that we do perform. And then pretty much afterwards, you pretty much get like a small snack between like 2 hours before, and that could be just like a little bit of yogurt. And then the only thing that I recommend is that if you don't, it's always good to eat fuel. You need some form of fuel before you work out. And a lot of people always say, I don't have the time to eat, I don't have the time to do anything. Especially if you're an early morning lifter. I do have clients like at 5 a.m. so I know sometimes they don't eat breakfast beforehand, because who wants to eat breakfast at 3 a.m., 2 a.m., right? So, at that point, honestly, all you're going to try to do is get some quick carbohydrates. They always recommend about 30 grams of carbs would be a good estimation of what to consume right before. If you're in a rush, it will at least fuel your workout. And then the other ways I see is hydration is the most important thing. Even a loss of 1 to 2% of body water or water in body weight pretty much already leads to decrements in strength. And then the third thing that's pretty important is actually the weight when you eat and like the fat you eat. So most powerlifters have a belt on, and it pretty much sits right on your belly button. So if you eat too much, or if you eat a lot of fat that actually stays in your gut a little longer, pretty much tightening that belt and having that belt can cause a lot of issues. It'll feel really terrible when you squeeze that belt. I don't know if I've experienced it because I've rushed meals, and it's like squishing on your stomach, and it just feels gross. You just want to throw up most of the time. So avoiding those fats right before just a little bit to. Of course, fats are good, so you do consume them, but you don't want too much of them beforehand, because you can cause GI issues during your lifts, depending on how good you are at digesting them and how fast you can digest them personally. It does vary per person. But and then pretty much maintaining your weight is what you always try to do. A lot of people just think they're trying to like gain weight and always bulk, but I always just see it as you're maintaining your weight, and then right before you're doing like a small little water cut that doesn't really hurt your performance, depending on whether you have a 24-hour weigh-in or a 2-hour weigh-in.
And like one thing that we always talk about is macronutrients, and I've seen powerlifters balance their macronutrients, and especially coming from more of like a bodybuilding side, the more the people who ask me for advice ask about macros, but I want to touch on micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. So where do those play a role in your performance? Maybe not specifically because there's so many to go through, but in general, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to get your vitamins and minerals. I mean, pretty much that's what's like fueling your body in terms of like it's actually giving it its energy. It's actually providing a lot of different areas. Like it's pretty much helping you in different ways. So what's important is that if you don't really eat your vegetables, vitamins and minerals, you'll actually feel pretty lethargic throughout the day. Even if you're eating enough carbs, fats and proteins, you'll still feel pretty crappy throughout the day. And that can affect you mentally. So if you're not eating your vitamins and minerals before a gym and you're feeling lethargic when you go to the gym, then mentally you're already compromised. You know, you're already compromised with your body, and then you're already compromised mentally. So that's pretty much two ways that you're hurting yourself when you're hitting that gym. And then that's when people make stupid mistakes. I mean, that's when people start to ego lift because they're like, I hit this weight last week, but for some reason everything just feels really crappy today. And they start to make mistakes that can pretty much hinder them in a way that they don't really need.
So one thing that I've been thinking about is, of course, we've been thinking about a lot lately is injuries. Of course, injuries are things that happen. And of course, if you underfuel, if you aren't getting the right nutrients in your diet, you're more likely to get injury. But both Omar and I right now have an injury. I have a sprained right labrum, and Omar, what's your technical term of it?
So technically I haven't checked it out yet because, you know, I'm one of those people. But I do have two injuries actually right now. I have an issue with one of my metacarpals. Generally it's metacarpal 2, but I do feel some strain on my muscle all the way over here towards metacarpal 5. And then I do have probably a labrum issue, as I have never checked it out, and it starts to hurt anteriorly. So that's not as fun.
So one thing I just wanted to touch on with that is, you know, people think when they fuel correctly, when they're getting their nutrients in and do everything that you won't get injured. And you know, I just want to dispel that myth, because we're both in a place right now where lifting for us isn't as optimal as it could be. Our workouts aren't as optimal. I know you've changed up your training since you actually got injured, and I know I have for sure. I have to definitely work around that injury. So I just want you to tell the story of how you got the injury, because first of all, it's hilarious, but also, you know, these are things to think about as you're getting into lifting or continuing your lifting journey.
Yeah, so I was actually supposed to do a competition this month on the 31st. Well, that's obviously a no-go now. But basically what happened was I was pretty much training my squat. I was doing a 4x4 at 365 pounds, which felt pretty good. I was already in my 4th set. And on my 4th set, 2nd rep, I actually clipped the competition rack that I was on. And it pretty much threw me back. And when that happened, there was a spotter behind me, but I was at the point that you couldn't be saved because I was already pretty much thrown back on my heels. My weight was too far back where I couldn't actually push forward and get help. So I had to pretty much slowly lean back so I wouldn't hurt my spotter, that he knew that I needed to dump it. So I went back slowly, hyperextended my wrist. I think those muscles and tendons could have pulled on something on my metacarpal. And then after that, you know, I couldn't really squat, couldn't really bench, couldn't really do anything. Gripping hurts. Gripping anything where my metacarpals aren't in a neutral state can pretty much suck.
Yeah. So, you know, injuries happen, and the important thing that I want to touch on here is that we're still training. I think we see a lot of people get injured and they use it as an excuse to stop working out. And I say excuse because you don't need to stop working out unless it's something that completely incapacitates you, like you have no more legs, you know, which is also an excuse because we have people that go to UFIT who don't have use of their legs and work out every single day. So like I just want to touch on the point, it's super important to just get in and figure out what you can do, maybe taking some time off. I know both of us, when we first got injured, we both took about a week or two off. To, you know, just to feel a little bit better, just so we can get that spot a little bit better before we actually started working around it. So that brings me to our next topic, which something that Omar is very well versed at. Well, I'm gonna let you talk about it.
Yeah, so what we, I guess, preach at UFIT is pretty much muscular imbalances, and basically SMR, which is self-myofascial release, and the importance of stretching. So a lot of people think that because they don't work out or they don't do anything that they don't need to stretch or they don't need to actually perform these movements. But pretty much the issues that cause these movements the most probably is actually just your day-to-day activities. I mean, pretty much sitting down in the chair like we're doing right now, our hips are in constant flexion, and that's pretty much what causes our psoas to be in a shortened position. So pretty much I'll basically do it like this, where let's say right here where my fingers meet is the actual joint, and on each side you have an equal length muscle, right? The muscles are pretty much at their optimal length. Well, let's say if these are my hips, and I'm always in flexion, they're actually shortened. If you notice, this is pretty much what occurs. So you're gonna have a shift. And what that actually occurs is now these are shortened and these are lengthened, and the ones that are on the opposite side of that psoas muscle would be like your glute max, for example. So you'd have a lengthened glute, which means you can't actually activate it, and you'd have a shortened psoas, which people always pretty much feel that impingement. Which can pretty much cause issues. So we pretty much teach how using the SMR and stretching, you're pretty much getting this muscle back to its optimal length to get it back to, to its regular position. And the reason why that can cause issues is due to a reason called synergistic dominance. So basically, if this is shortened, and the glute max is actually my main hip extensor, which is pretty much when you stand up, it's the standing up portion of a squat you can think of, where you're pushing your hips up and forward. Pretty much what happens is if you can't actually get an optimal binding of your actual glute, then another muscle needs to take over to actually take that power. So in that kind of sense, your hamstrings would take over for your butt. And then if you get synergistic dominance, which means that your hamstrings actually take over more than your glutes, that pretty much means that your mechanics are all messed up now, because now different muscles are doing things that they really shouldn't do in terms of the percentage of power they're taking over, and now you're having different mechanical movements because of that. So we brought this little guy today. This is the Theracane. This is what Trevor and I actually use to help with that self-myofascial release. And what that does, it actually just breaks up the fascia. I'm not 100% sure right now, but I knew what I was told for SMR was that there's basically like these chemical compounds that build up in your fascia, and those pretty much cause little, basically like knots that you feel on your back. So you use this actual Theracane to basically break those knots up and actually pretty much get that muscle a little bit smoother so you can actually stretch it out. So you'd always do a form of SMR before you would do stretching. But for example, like I said, I use the hip flexion as an example, but even just like driving, if you drive, a lot of people drive with their hand up here, and they're always leaning back. So if you notice, this trap is pretty much always tight for most people, because if you're gonna have this up or this hand up, whichever hand is up, and you're leaning back, you're actually constantly contracting that trap, and that's actually being shortened. Or if you're sitting down hunched over the whole time, you're also pretty much basically getting your tight trap, and you're pretty much getting your chest fully tight, so we pretty much help those individuals get back. So for example, this little guy, if you want to use your chest, sometimes we pretty much find the spot. I will demonstrate on Trevor.
Oh no, this is really painful.
Is this one the hurt shoulder?
This is.
Good. So we'll use this one. So pretty much you have your pec major, which is your major muscle right here that you can see. And you can actually use this on yourself. So what's nice about this is that there's two individual spots on each side. One just has a spherical shape, one has a little more of a trigger point shape, so we're gonna use this one right now to pretty much get the spot just right here. So if he were to raise his arm just at about this angle, 90 degrees, you're pretty much exposing that spot right here. And it can be a little bit painful, and that's when you're getting your pec major. So like I said, if this is really tight, what that does is that pronates your shoulder. So what issue is that occurs here, if you notice the muscle runs like this, you're pulling that shoulder in, and that's where you see that pronation that occurs from people. When people's shoulders are really pushed over, it's because their chests are really pulling into that. So another issue was that a lot of people don't get is that their pec minor, which actually runs from your shoulder, but it runs underneath your pec major. One of the only ways that I found that you can really get it is if you elevate your shoulder, and then you get that same spot again. It's roughly a little higher, but when you feel that spot, you'll pretty much feel it. You could tell by the reaction.
Yep.
You can feel it easier with your fingers, but of course you'd be doing this to yourself, so it'd be like me pushing down and elevating. But I wanted to demonstrate and show at the same time. So yeah, you would get that pec minor, which is underneath, and then you would perform those stretches that would be pretty much for it. That you would pretty much hold something back and rotate, and you would pretty much stretch your pec major. You can actually rotate your palm the other way, and he'll actually feel it a little more in his bicep right now. And then he'll put his palm back and back up, and when that stretches back, you'll actually feel that stretch more through your armpit running down right here.
Yep. Wow. I think that had a lot of really good nuggets in it. Of course, all that we can do in just a short video like this isn't everything. So self-myofascial release is a really good realm to dive into yourself, especially if you are somebody who exercises all the time and you find you always either have pain in certain areas. If I know sometimes after I squat I get back pain. All these little things that you can add into your workout regimen so that you can recover better and be ready for the next session of exercise, which is, of course, is always going to be the most important thing. If you can hit every exercise with a good level of intensity within a structured program, then that's when you're going to see the best results. Okay, so moving on, one thing that Omar and I talk about all the time is self-development and entrepreneurism. So Omar, I want you to just touch on where are your interests within self-development and entrepreneurism. Just talk a little bit about your ideas there.
Yeah, so right now, Trevor and I are actually thinking about opening up a little counseling business. We're pretty much, we're only two people. It's like we say, we want to help as many people as we can. Every day I wake up, what I think is, when I was overweight, I had no one to come to. I had no clue what I was doing. You just have what's on the internet. So you have what everybody thinks that's correct. But you're really lost. You really have no one that you feel you can actually go up to and just actually talk to about it, get help from. So counseling is a really big interest of mine, but of course I don't want to just help the limited amount of people that I can only personally connect to. So Trevor and I pretty much thought that we could create an organization of individuals and dietitians that would be under one brand, and that they all would have that drive and that empathetic value to reach out to more people. Because if we could have a big community of dietitians to impact a lot of others, then that way we can create this whole community throughout the nation of healthier individuals and a little bit more self-confident individuals. But like I said, we want to pretty much help people that are just regular, your average Joe, just looking for some quick diet tips. He needs just to straighten out his diet a little bit, nothing too wrong. So people who have a little bit higher issues, a little bit more eating disorders, maybe they're a little bit more self-conscious, they're really not trusting. So in that kind of sense, we also want to help them as well. So we don't want to have one target. We want to be able to impact as many people as we can. So that's pretty much an interest of mine in terms of entrepreneurship. I'm not in it in the terms of just building a business and getting money. My actual, like I said, the reason why we're in this and the reason I want to do it is because I want to impact. I want to hit all those people. I want to basically get all my information and counseling skills to other dietitians in order to basically help as many people as I can. I don't want somebody I wouldn't want to turn somebody down because I didn't have the time, I want to be able to be like, oh, okay, you need help? Well, let me tell you, I got this other dietitian who also works with us, who we've all talked, we all educate each other, and you can go to them. They're just as good, and I would actually trust that other person, you would actually know that you're sending that person to a correct individual and that person would work with you. So that's kind of what I wanted to do for that, really build that community, really build that foundation to impact more lives.
I think one of the things that we really did was we kind of just sat down and we did the math. It was a thing of, wow, if I was working full-time doing counseling and education, I don't just want to say counseling because I think people take that as they have a problem, but counseling and education, just really helping people along, kind of find their way and what works for them. So I think what we did was we did the math, and we decided if we were working full-time as educators and counselors that we would only be able to service maybe 10, 15, 20 people per week. However, if we had other dietitians who we vetted out and decided wow, they're really, really special people that were willing to have the same drive and help people as we are, then we can impact a lot more lives. Okay, the battery's running out, so I just want to touch on two more things. Number one is self-development, something that we talk about a lot. So what are your interests in self-development? What kind of books are you reading right now?
So self-development is a pretty crucial thing in my opinion. For example, the drive to work is about a 25-minute drive. And most of the time I used to do it just spending music, listening to music or doing nothing for the most part. But I've realized that that's one of my only free times that I have. So now I've been doing a little bit more reading in terms of audiobooks because I find that it's the easiest way for me to get a little bit more knowledge in without having to schedule extra hours in the day. You have a lot of hours in the day. Most people think they don't have the time, but driving around, I drive for probably about an hour a day. I finished one of the audiobooks which I read, which is the How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And that literally finished that book in like 3 or 4 days just based off of driving. And that's like a 7.5-hour book. So you really realize that that's pretty much, you do a lot of driving throughout the day. There's a lot of time throughout the day that you have to actually, you know, do the self-development, actually do a little bit of reading that you can actually build upon your own skills. Another book that I'm pretty much reading right now is actually The Way of the Wolf by the man Jordan Belfort, and he's pretty much talking about his own system that he used in terms of sales, but he's talking about it in the terms that he created after he came back from prison. So not the unethical way before that he got to prison, but you know, he pretty much realized that was a good system to work, and that he pretty much tries to help that, because I think pretty much sales is interesting, and then I've been trying to just look for more of actual self-development books in the terms of like mind self-development books. Psychology is pretty interesting, so non-verbal behaviors I always thought was pretty interesting. Psychology is interesting, you know, just always having a way to motivate yourself, you know, always self-development books are pretty much good to motivate yourself sometimes. Sometimes you're like, wow, okay, I'm still learning. When you find something that's interesting in terms of what can help you in your future, that just pretty much builds upon that. I mean, if you feel like you're at a plateau, if you feel like you're stuck and you don't know what to do, I mean, why don't you just try reading? Why don't you see, even if you can only get one specific thing from every book, I mean, if you read one book a month, that's 12 different things that you could have used to pretty much impact or change your business or impact and change your life. So even if you only got one thing, I mean, that's still one extra thing you didn't have before. So that's one way that y'all should think about that.
I love that. I think that's a super practical tip. I think, you know, a lot of people, especially our age, don't really know what they want to do with life. I ask my friends all the time, and a lot of them say, I don't know. And that's okay. And it's all about kind of finding what you're passionate about, acting towards it, and just always being prepared. You know, you never know when you're going to find your passion, so why not work on yourself now, so when you do find your passion, that you are ready for it. Okay, and the last thing is, Omar, if any of this resonated with the people watching this video, how could we reach you? How could we contact you and follow up with you?
Yeah, the best way right now will probably be through Instagram at the moment. My Instagram tag is oguerrero_fitness, and it will be below at the bottom of the link, so just check down there. But yeah, I mean, you can always feel free to DM me if you have any questions about it. I'm pretty much open to talk or discussions about it right now. I have a lot of interesting topics. Right now I'm creating a hybrid performance training with another friend of mine, because he was actually a track and field athlete. So we're combining both terms, powerlifting and track and field sports, to be basically the best athlete we can be. So yeah, if you have any questions on that, stretching, nutrition, I mean, feel free to contact me.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to us. Right now is really the best time to do it. Of course, we are building businesses, and we will be graduating soon, and you know, our full-time careers will be starting then. So reach out to us now. Feel free to ask us any questions that you have, whether that's Omar or myself. Of course, you can reach me here on YouTube. You can reach me over on Instagram at Trevor Lomax. Feel free to reach out and really ask us any questions. We've helped many people before, and we're willing to help you as well. So Omar, give me a high five. Woo! That's what I'm talking about, and we'll see you next time.